All right.
Hi, Rika, and really nice to see you again. We had a conversation on the 14th of September, and you realized your true nature during the conversation. And that conversation is actually posted on your website, well, actually on your YouTube channel and on my YouTube channel as well. So people can refer to that because it's quite an interesting one. It was a suggestion by a lady I had a conversation with previously called Colette, and Colette asked the question as to whether there were any recordings of people realizing their true nature. And then a few days later, Rika showed up. So
That's how it goes.
yeah,
That's how the universe works. For
yeah.
sure.
So yeah, maybe you can just really say a bit about your story. I know that at the end of the previous conversation, you were saying there isn't much to say now, but I'll let you do your best on that.
Okay. Yeah, it's true. Like there is not so much to say. And also my my idea is that the words that I'm speaking don't do justice to what I really want to say. It's like the words that we have in our vocabulary are limited in order to describe the experience that I had. And so that's why at the end there was not so much to say, because once you understand that there is nothing to say, then that's it. And then of course over the next, I think it's now 2 weeks ago, something like that,
Yes.
um those 2 weeks were quite interesting, and so an adjustment period, I would call it. One of the funniest things that happened was the next morning. The first day was amazing. Like I stayed in that state of really being aware and understanding what was going on. And I have like a nice thing to a nice story of that afternoon. So my son was flying in from Europe that day. So we had the morning we had the conversation, and he was flying in, and he was supposed to come in around 1. And he was going to drive through my house, which is an hour and a half from the airport. He was going to rent a car, drive to the house. I was working in the city, also an hour and a half. And me and my other daughter, we were going to drive home and be home by 6. But I got out early, and because he had no phone connection, just coming into the United States, he was just going to drive, and we would meet up at the house. And I'm on the highway driving the car much earlier than I thought I was going to be. And I have this idea, and I'm thinking, wouldn't it be unbelievable if we just run into Arno now, my son? And within a couple of seconds, I look into my mirror, and there's somebody waving at me, the car behind me, and it was my son. Now you have to understand, this is Manhattan. There are millions of cars on the road. Yeah, it's ridiculous how much traffic there is.
Yes.
We met up, and I don't know, like it's my thinking that attracts it or whatever, but it was an experience that
Yes.
it was the most amazing experience. So I'm in this
Mm.
realm, and it was like unbelievable, and explained to my kids what was going on. And then the next morning when I woke up, it was gone. It was gone. I
Mm.
couldn't see it. I couldn't feel it. There was nothing left. I'm like, and I panicked. I'm like, what is this? Where is it? And then I did the exercise again, close my eyes, look into my eyes, like my eyelids, and then go back into the awareness. Am I aware? What am I aware of? What am I feeling? What am I hearing? And within a couple of minutes, or I don't even know the time, but I was there again. But it's made me realize how our body is programmed, and how we just, like, when we go unconscious for a second, our body is going into like the same old story. So, and I could see that. And in the beginning, the first couple of days, I had to really focus on it a couple of times, that I lost it, that I was like, oh my God, where is it? And at this moment, I dare to say that it's permanent, it's more permanent, it's like more um uh, it's as if I have my body mind, I'm not saying under control, because that's totally not the right word, but I wouldn't know how to say it any different. It is more like I understand that my body mind is my vehicle to have my experience in the 3D world. And so I would describe it like when I first like after a couple of days, when I realized this, that this, what I call me, what you call Rika, is just my vehicle to have this 3D experience. And I truly got so much love for that body mind, for the me. And I went to a couple of days that, and I still get very emotional, that I was like emotional in, not in a sad way, but in an enormous feeling of love and gratitude, and the like knowing that this body mind, because now I truly understand that the mind, even though we can't see it, it's part of our body. It's not part of the infinite being that we are. It is really part of the 3D dimension. How it is like, how it has to suffer, and how it is like taking care of us, and thinks that it wants, that it is doing the right thing, and it's working hard, and it's like so there is so much love for that body that wants to like protect us and make sure that no harm is, like it has this, it's this illusion, it's an illusion, but it works so hard to keep the illusion.
Yes.
And so that's why I had this overwhelming feeling of love for me, but also for all the other body minds that are running around that carry part of me.
Sure.
And that are showing me what's going on in my mind. Like it's a reflection of the unfolding of my being, which is, and again, I know that when I use the words like this, that it doesn't even do justice, because it is much bigger and broader and magnificent and joyful and blissful than what I would ever be able to put into words. And while I'm saying this right now, I even, like, I feel better, I see better, I hear better, I smell better. Like my senses became more
Heightened.
evolved, like life, like I don't even, yeah, I don't know exactly how to say it, but I was so scared that I was not gonna have like this body, that I was gonna become like emotionless or
Yeah.
less, like whatever, when I would recognize my true nature. Because you see those people and they're like so monotone, and they're like, oh, we're enlightened and whatever. I was like, I don't want to be like that. That's not who I am. And it's totally not what happened. So, and again, it's not what happened to me, to this body mind.
Sure.
It can be something that happens to your body mind or to somebody else's body mind. I don't know. It's part of, I realize that whatever I see is my illusion. And at this point, David, who is talking to me, is part of that illusion and showing me that part of me that I'm seeing right now. It's like one big mess if you don't have the words to explain it, but it is beautiful. So I also can see how my whole life was one big school to get me to the point where I am today. So from the first moment that I realized when I was a 6-year-old that I had my first experience that I would call part of knowing that there was more than what meets the eye.
Mm.
And then it kept going. I have a lot of memories when I was a child that I could go in and out.
Mm.
Being aware, I just didn't know that that was being aware. That was like being who I really was, getting out of my body mind.
Yes.
And so as a child, I was probably most of the time out of my body mind.
Yeah.
And I also understand now why I didn't have so many friends, or I was not interested. People might say, how come you, it never really, it didn't appeal to me. Like friends for me was just work.
Yes.
Had to,
To maintain an identity.
yeah, to just to, it was work,
Yeah.
and it was uncomfortable, and I just preferred being on my own. And then of course people would encourage you to be with the kids and play. I hate playing games. I still do. It's not something that makes me happy. So, and now I understand that it was all part of me wanting to just be my limited
Yes.
self, you know?
It's interesting. I had a conversation with a gentleman yesterday who's very successful, and he was saying that when he was about 12 or 13, his school reports always used to say he spends all his time looking through the windows. And I think it's the same experience as you,
Yeah.
really. There is the you know, the idea of being fully present in the world isn't that attractive when you know your infinite nature. So looking through the window is much more appealing. So
So as a kid, I totally was in touch with my infinite being, although I didn't know.
mm,
And I think that until I was in my 20s, I was pretty much in touch with my
mm,
true nature. In, out, in, out. And then I think it was really because became part of society. When you start working,
mm,
then you have an obligation way more than when you're studying. It's like la
mm,
di da, you know, you still can do whatever you want.
mm,
But then you get a paycheck. And I think that's where it started with me.
mm,
And then from that moment on, and I see it now going back, the minute I got a paycheck, I wanted out. I wanted to have my own business. I wanted to do my own thing. I knew I was not created to work for somebody.
mm,
The problem was I was pretty good at it. So I got promoted because I did a reasonably good job. I can see this now, but it made me miserable
mm,
because I needed to follow instructions that I knew were not the best. And I went against my own nature. And that's when I got in trouble. Every time I wanted to get out, get out, get out. And it's like, I can give you all the details, but I think a lot of people would recognize this,
mm,
that at a certain point, you just know you don't want to be on somebody else's payroll. You want to do your own thing because you know what you know,
mm.
and you want to be true to yourself. And I would think I read it's an interesting thing. The first book that I read that was interesting to me was the books of Shirley MacLaine.
Mhm.
On a limb. What's the title? I don't even, and I was in Belgium. It was a translation. And I must have been like 16 or 17 years old when I read that. And I was fascinated with the way she was describing her stories. I was like, wow, she really, and I felt in awe for her nerve to put that in a book
Mm,
and to say, this is my life.
mm,
And I felt like I was like, wow, she dares. Like I would never dare saying anything that goes on in my head. that is very similar, and my experience is very similar. I see things, I hear things, but I would never talk about it because people would think I'm crazy. And she did that. And that was like, for me, she was like, wow, a role model, you know? And then that disappeared again. And then I started reading all kind of, so I became a seeker when I was a teenager. But being in Belgium at the time was not really the easiest thing, because I don't think that in Belgium people were so open-minded, although probably everybody thought the same thing wherever they were in the world. Doesn't matter. So I think that was like, when I look back now, I can see that I had those periods of awareness, and that it just I locked myself up when I started working. That's when it really went downhill. And so it's only about 3 years ago that I woke up one morning and that I looked into the mirror. I'm like, whatever I'm doing right now is really not working for me. It needs to change. And I was in a job that I didn't like. I was doing things that I didn't like. I was in physical pain all the time. For that reason, I took like a lot of painkillers. I would drink way too much. I wouldn't call myself an alcoholic, because then you cannot just stop when it's a different, but I definitely had way too much alcohol. That was good. And so one day I just decided, it's over. You're just gonna be true to yourself again. And that's what happened.
Was this in 2019?
That was in 2019. And so then, and it's an interesting way to look at it. But then, of course, within that year, a little bit later in that year, the pandemic hit. And that forced us all to go like
inside.
And in a way, that saved my life. In May of 2020, I wasn't even able to walk. I rolled out of bed. Wow. I could hardly walk. I was in such bad physical shape. And I knew that I did it to myself. I knew it was my mind. So I started, the whole seeking thing became like, it was beyond seeking. I wanted to understand what happened to me. And then, of course, you go to in the regular, I went from reading books about trauma, childhood trauma. We all have childhood trauma. We all went through, everybody, and it's not about what happened to you, it's your reaction to what you did. So we all have this thing. So I went through the whole thing, like I wanted to understand at that point what happened with my brain. And that's how I very fast went back to, because in my life, I became a Reiki master teacher. I did Shambhala healing. I did all the magnified. I did it all. But never ever was there anything that was like, this is it. I always felt like there was something missing, something that wasn't completely true. It was still coming from outside, not from inside, you know? So then I really wanted to know what was going on inside of me. And then from one, you go and you seek and you seek and you seek, and you bump into one thing and another and another. And then I started, because I watched a couple of other interviews, and a lot of people mentioned the same teachers that I had. And so we go through that process, and then all of a sudden things line up. And then I had a conversation with you. So it started with The Greatest Secret, and then I had a conversation with Sailor Bob, and then I had a conversation with Jan Fraser, and then I had a conversation with you. And it needed to be in that order, because all all three of those conversations, and I see it now very clear what it did for me, what it opened, and why then I had to have I first needed to have those conversations for me to be able to recognize my true nature. It could not have been
in a different order.
perfect. It was perfect. And everything that's happening in my life, all the timing, life just unfolds, just like the seasons. And you cannot have fall before spring came. It cannot happen. And you can work as much as you want to try to do that, but it's not going to happen. It's life just unfolds. And it is funny that most of the time we really try to get fall first before spring. That's what we humans do. We want to do it our way. And that creates a lot of frustration, a lot of pain and suffering. And there is no need for that. Not at all. It's like, and that's in a nutshell my journey, coming to like, and that's why I also say like there is nothing to say, because it was just perfect. No matter what it was that happened, it needed to be there in order to get to that moment that you see it, and then you start laughing just like I did, because that's it. Like, it's so beautiful and it's so simple, and you say to yourself, how is it possible that I never saw that before? Because it was there all the time. It's like beyond. And then you start thinking about it, of course. How could it? That's a thought, because it's then you start thinking. It's very interesting stuff.
It is. Yeah, as you were saying, that over the past couple of weeks, you kind of reviewed certain things and looked at different books, and you just see that the truth is there on every page, but then you didn't see it at that time.
No, it's interesting. Like, I'm going over the same books because I want to see what I like. I don't even know why I did that. I was drawn to do that. And then I read a couple of pages and I just put it away. I'm like, and I start laughing again. I'm like, how could I not see that? It's on every page. It is on every page. People that like the same with, I went back to Eckhart Tolle because we spoke about it in the first conversation. And it's like, yeah, I don't need to read the book because I know what's in there. I went to certain sections. I'm like, yeah, exactly. How come I've never saw that? It's like, it's interesting. You're just ready when you're ready. It comes when it comes. The awareness will just
reveal itself.
Reveal itself. Yeah, it's there. It's there, and you will. A friend of mine just asked me, because I was talking about it, and he was so enthusiastic. I'm like, how do I get there? And I said, I'm so sorry, I have nothing to say to you. That I can point you to some things that helped me, the things that I looked at that helped me. And I think one of the most helpful ideas for me was the idea that there is a difference between, and we spoke about it, it was very powerful for me to understand that, the idea of how thoughts are arising and how there is thinking. To think is a verb, and it's you need an action to think, while when you are in awareness, there is just thoughts arising. And so I even made a little video about it, because that was for me, and specifically in the first couple of days, to bring me back, to think about, am I thinking, or are thoughts arising? And that would be my sign where I was. And the interesting stuff is, and this is a little wild even for me, that I can feel my body changing when I'm in awareness or when I am thinking. When I'm thinking, the pain comes back. I feel my body. There is the old body mind that has a connection with a certain me, or a certain, how do I don't even know how to say that, like a version of me, the version of me that is the old me, that still exists because it's all there. It's just all the same, it's there.
Yeah.
But now I choose to be in another version of me that is aware. You have a choice in every second to choose awareness or to choose
Limitation.
Yeah, you have in every second. And as I said, like in the beginning, the first couple of days, I really had to make that decision consciously in every second. And in the beginning, the first 2 days, I had no idea that was but then of course, because you're like, I truly believe, like, once you got it, you got it. Although my mind wanted me to believe that I didn't get it.
That's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all, well, that's true of everyone, really, that everyone is already in their infinite nature. It's just that they're listening to the mind telling them that they're not. That's all it is. It's like like a broadcast. Everybody's watching You're Not Enlightened program, and it's running 24 hours a day.
It is so true. It is so true. And then you have to say, no, I'm not watching that show. Yeah. Another, and it just reminded me, another thing that came up, that happened to me over the last 2 weeks, is that animals are starting to show up in my environment. I saw, the first thing that was really unusual was a fox that ran over the street and stopped in front of my car, looked at me, and then just walked like, but can you imagine, like, I live where it's a lot of woods, and there is fox. Never saw a fox, never ever saw a fox. And I could stop, luckily, and he was really looking at me, like there was no fear from his part, my part. It was like a recognition, you're part of the world, which was so interesting. The next day, the squirrels were like scratching on my door here to come, like a squirrel. I'm like, why are you doing this? This is weird. Like, first I was like, get out of my, and the second, wait a minute, something's happening here. This is weird. Then I saw rabbits on my, and this is not where I'm living. It's like not really in the woods. There's houses, like I live in a community, like a lake community. I saw a possum on my deck. I saw a, how is it called? Like, sometimes English language is still like, I could say it in Dutch, but you're not gonna understand what I'm saying. So all this, like,
all these different animals are just coming.
All these different animals, like, that are not you. It's not like a bird, like a little bird in my, no, like rodents, big ones, giant, hanging out on my deck, hanging out, like not just passing, hanging out. I'm like, where are you guys coming from? Then yesterday I was with, yeah.
They've come to say, Rika, we're really glad to know you finally got it. We've been waiting for you a long time.
This is so weird. It's a whole different world. Yesterday, a deer did the same as the fox. A deer with like big antlers that you usually also don't see, walked across this, run over, stopped in front of the car, looked at me again, and my friend was sitting there. She says, "I never saw anything like this." I said, "Me neither." Animals are showing up in my life. Thought that was very cool.
Yeah,
Interesting.
great.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Rika. That's been fantastic. And yeah, it's early days, but it's yeah, really interesting the way it's unfolding for you. So
Yeah, I'm excited.
it's funny how there were so many synchronicities in the past couple of weeks,
Yeah.
finishing your job, realization, and in a few days' time, you're heading off to Europe on a big camping trip, aren't you, for a few
Yes.
weeks?
Yes, I'm very excited. Like a lot of things are changing, and you know what the beauty is? I always did those things, but I felt always guilty. And I felt like I couldn't, like it was like I was stealing, or stealing time from people, or doing things very selfish, like it was me that wanted to do this. And this is like the first time that I feel free,
Hmm.
that I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. This is me listening to me, like, and letting it unfold
Hmm.
the way it's supposed, without guilt, without um feeling I'm not worth to do that, like
Hmm.
in a good way.
Hmm.
It's very cool.
Great. You and the animals are happy.
Everybody's happy. Yeah.
That's
No,
great.
but you have to understand, like, I'm known to be afraid of animals. That's
Wow.
maybe the part that is the most, I didn't even say that.
Hmm.
I'm very scared of cats. I cannot be in a room with a cat. A cat would attack me.
Wow.
I had many cats attacking me. And I'm very afraid of dogs. My mother's dog bit me when I was a baby. So
Hmm.
I would go around blocks not to face a dog. It's like that's why that even adds another layer. Like I'm really scared. And I wasn't scared at all.
Hmm.
Wasn't scared at all,
Hmm.
which was interesting.
They're talking to you in some way, aren't they?
Yeah, there's something going on there. And
Hmm.
it's also to show me that there is nothing to be afraid of. Like
Hmm.
my fear of cats and dogs, it's an illusion.
Well,
It's
there's a
not.
saying that fear is born of duality. So fear can only exist in a dualistic mind. So in a simple way, you can see why they're showing up, because they recognize that there's alignment with your infinite unified nature. So they feel comfortable to come and see you now.
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful, and it's like very interesting and cool. Like it's a cool thing to see that. Like
Mm.
it's proof of what's going on. Because this is the thing, like that my mind, I mentioned it like a little, my mind still wants to tell me, you really think you're aware? Really? Ha ha ha. Like, but I'm aware. I know.
Mm. Yeah, the old TV channel comes back on sometimes.
Yeah, it's what it is. But then you have the choice in every second.
Yeah. It's like you sit on the remote without even realizing there it is in front of you again.
Yeah, it's totally cool. Totally cool. And you have it all on the we yeah, it's all, and that's the same thing. Like we spoke for I don't know how long, and at the end of the day, there is nothing to say.
No.